Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. Today we're going to do another special selection, which is where one of you guys tell me exactly what you want me to check out, and I'll look into it. Today's special selection comes at us from Damien. It says Kalevala by Antti Martikainen. It's a 22-minute instrumental folk metal suite. Enjoy! 25-minute. I don't remember if I said that or not. Interestingly, we can also see down here that it's the video is chapter based, and it's actually divided up into 9 movements. 9 movements. Movement 1 is the birth. Movement 2 is an ode to Kalevala. Movement 3 is the Northland Trials. 4 is Old Man's Lament. 5 is the Forger of Horizons. 6 is Witch of the Abyss. 7 is Battle for the Celestial Sphere. 8 is Restoring the Sun and the Moon. And 9 is Eternal Bliss. I think we are in for quite the story on this one. And interestingly, none of it has lyrics. As Damien said, it's an instrumental. So, let's dive into this, see where it takes us. Yeah, beautiful little embellishments there. It makes a lot of sense for the birth to be a singular instrument at the beginning and for this to slowly layer up with more ideas. Really beautiful melody writing. Great atmosphere. Now we transitioned out of the intro into the core of the song, which is the second movement, and we actually have the drums and the guitar and all the metal elements coming into the song as well. Really focusing on the riffs and the atmosphere they're creating. I am eagerly anticipating the return of a strong melody line. really interesting to keep that energy and volume in the drums while everything else sort of withdraws a bit. And introducing a slight variation on that melody riff. I absolutely love that I don't know what the names of these instruments are. Yeah, that nice offbeat, emphasized note that the guitars are doing gives it this nice bounciness. Also gives it a flair of adventure. That bounciness could attribute to the fun at the beginning of a journey before you've hit any hardships. I've sat on this melody for quite some time though. I think this is the third time around. And a slight variation on it now. We've gotten rid of those 16th note grace notes. Alright, interesting. So the entire part 2 was basically variations on a single theme. Very nice transition into this movement though. Yeah, I like how these wider, more held out strings is really invoking this idea of, the chill and isolation of winter. It's a very different vibe than that, adventurous summer autumn feel that we just went through in movement 2. Yeah, and we got a little bit of danger here as well. The tension is certainly rising. A lot of that playfulness is gone. A lot of that, the playfulness is gone and been replaced with tension, sharper notes. The guitar and drum rhythm is extremely more disjointed, more rhythmically complex. And then we have this overbearing choir in the background as well. Oh yeah, and the movement is called the Northland Trials. So yeah, this would be some hardships or a hurdle to overcome. Notice that despite their music being a little bit more tense, there isn't dread or anything like that. There's still a lot of victory. We haven't quite hit a huge roadblock yet in this journey. Yeah, beautiful storytelling with this solo. Yeah, those slides on top of the background completely shifting at that, bar to bar. We had, big and orchestral versus very muted and withheld. The guitar solo sliding down these notes, just a perfect transition between the two. It hides the fact that there was that sharp transition between the vibes. Dang, we moved to part 4 already. This song is just, it's progressing quick. This is very interesting. It's still in 4/4. We have a pickup note on the beat 4 of the 4th bar, but it also feels like the ending of the melody line, so it's this weird transition between the past idea and the repetition of it. I really like that textural layering there between the choir and the I don't know, it sounds like a synth. Strings maybe? Interesting. This is not the type of music I would assume for Old Man's Lament. I would kind of expect something a little bit more pensive or atmospheric. And instead, there's still a lot of adventurous elements here. That chord in the 3rd bar. Well, I guess it's the end of the 3rd moving into the 4th bar, and the way that the melody plays over those 2 chords. So good. Yeah, that piano in the background's nice accenting of this flute. This is what I was expecting from a song with lament in the title. It's still a bit bright and cheery, but at least it has some melancholic elements to it. Once again though, that flute line, the pickup note feels like it belongs as a finisher to end out the melody line, but it also begins the repetition of the melody. It's such a weird way to write that. Yeah, the Forger of Horizons, that metal tinging in the background immediately puts my mind in the idea of a forge and the creation of, suppose, the horizons. Yeah, these long held out, very impending whole notes. And that sound of clashing steel in the background as ambiance is perfect for this. And the piano is a nice bit of contrast to all of this as well. Kind of putting the element of precision that goes into the craft of forging things. It's not just the heavy weight of steel being banged together. There's a lot of precision and intentionality in it. And I like how the piano element kind of incorporates some of that into the music. Even the guitar solo here began with the core theme of this section. I think this so far is one of my favorite folk metal elements because we have this really folky style of writing music for the melody line with just this real metal undertone creating that sound floor, and it meshes so perfectly. I can't tell if those are 16th notes or triplet 8th notes. But I'm like leaning towards triplet, and I really love how that's one of the first times we've really introduced more of a polyrhythmic element to some of this stuff. A lot of it has really dealt with sets of 4s and 8s. Again, just real great transition into this next movement. Although I suppose it helps that a lot of the tonality and notes chosen, even some of the chord progressions, are very similar between a lot of these, so it's very easy to move between them all, especially since every movement seems to be much of a working around a specific theme. So it's really like moving between 9 riffs. It's a really nice groove, but with that dirty guitar tone, it has a lot of bite to it that I'm just really digging. Yeah, and augmenting that pretty basic guitar riff with choirs and strings. I mean, that's just what folk metal does best, but it is a beautiful texture when it's combined that way. Not expecting a shift to punk drums almost. Nice falling down in thirds there. Alright, let's hear what the battle music is. Yeah, so they ditched the choir in favor of these group vocals, not really aiming for a note, but just kind of hitting around the same note. And it provides that same sort of vocal width that we would expect, that we've been showcased so often in this song, but with a sound that is more on point for a battle happening. Really cool. I will say, I'll hold that for the analysis. Yes. Really cool rhythmic layering there between the strings and the drum bass kicks. While the brass and the choir lay down the really strong atmospheric elements. I know that harmonies have been used all throughout here, but I think it's really cool that during the battle music, there's so many elements of the melody that are harmonized, which kind of tell me that both sides are fighting over the same thing, pretty much the same side. They just have like a minor difference that would put them at odds with each other. Yeah, so obviously I believe we've become victorious. We've overcome some hurdles, and we are restoring the sun and the moon now. We have that bright, adventurous element back from part 2. In fact, this melody line sounds very familiar. I don't think it is the melody line from part 2. It might be. It is very close, at least. Yeah, and a variation on it. We've taken out those 16th note little grease notes for more of a straighter. No, I said that same thing about part 2, though. A very drastic atmospheric change here, but a very similar melody line to what we've heard before. I do love that passing on the melody from the flute to the brass, maybe? Yeah, gorgeous stuff. I can already tell this is going to be a lengthy video. We're at 26 and a half minutes, and I have only listened to the music. I do have quite a lot to say though, and I guess let's just get into it, right? No need to sit around thinking about it. Let's just get into that gut reaction. That's what we're here for, reactions. All right, so there is a lot of really gorgeous moments in this song. I also love the way that it tells a fairly unique story that I don't know if I would have picked up on without the song titles in front of me. Before we end this video, I'm probably going to look up Kalevala real quick after I give my reaction and see what it is. The song titles kind of lead me to an element of a creation myth. So I kind of want to check real quick, like I said, at the end of the video before we close it up, if this is a creation myth. Because that's a lot of the vibes I'm getting with the terminology of the song titles. But without that, I'm not sure I would have gotten as much out of the song without knowing what the song titles were, because I would not have had the clear divide between the movements, which is a blessing and a curse. Like I mentioned, without having the song titles there, I wouldn't have known that there was these, specific changes. There were definitely a couple of sections that felt very distinct, such as Forging the Horizons, that had a very distinct feel to it. Old Man's Lament had a portion of it that had a bit of a different feel, and the battle, whatever the battle song was called, the battle movement, that had a slightly different feel to it. But overall, when you take out the intro, was at birth, and then the outro, which was the relaxation bit, Eternal Bliss. When you take those out, you really have 7 movements that are very, very similar, for better or worse, and a lot of them transition into all of them transition into each other, actually. I don't think there's a single movement that has a hard stop at the end of it. Every single one of them transitions into another, which is phenomenal that they included so many transitions that just worked. A lot of them are so fluid. One of them comes at the end of a guitar solo, and somehow it doesn't feel like the guitar solo was cut off prematurely. It doesn't feel like the guitar solo should have went back into anything. It just beautifully melds into the next segment. And yes, there is a lot of praise to be given for their transitions. It is just, oh man, they are smooth. And like I said, without the song titles, they're telling me, I don't think I would have known that this song was divided up into segments or ideas or movements or parts, or however you want to word that. I keep saying movements, but they don't really feel like movements to me because it does feel like an entire song. I don't know if it is a rule for movements to have hard breaks between them, but that is typically what I think of when I say movement. So I think I'm going to change that terminology and continue to say part, which is the terminology that they use. They call them parts. And I think that actually works a little bit better because, like I said, it is really one 25-minute song. It's not broken up into movements. It's just that the different sections of the songs have different names on them. But like I said, that kind of works for better or worse. It does provide this sense of a nonstop journey, and I think that's really cool. One of the really big things these days is making things feel real time. We have lots of really interesting scenes in film and television that are emulating or even going out of their way to be, one-shot scenes. Man, I'm completely blanking on name. I was gonna drop some examples of one shots, but I just uh, I want to say the Protector. Anyways, yeah, I'm completely blanking on stuff, which kind of sucks. Anyways, let's move on. Lots of film and television are trying to create this idea of real time events. I know there was a recent film that was a war movie that emulated the one shot scene. Birdman was a film that did it recently. Daredevil has had a one shot choreographed fight scene in some of its seasons. It goes way back. We have tons of stuff. I know, who was it? Was it Hitchcock? Hmm. I remember a black and white film. It might have been a Hitchcock film that went for this idea of the one shot film. But anyways, I'm just saying it's not a brand new technique, but it is something that is fairly present in modern media. Even video games like God of War have gone for this style, where there's no breaks in time. And I love how that's implemented here. We're telling a story in real time ish. Assuming that this is a creation myth, I don't think the world was created in 25 minutes according to this myth. However, I like that they have made all of it back to back. There are no breaks between the birth and the Ode to Kalevala and the trials of Northland and the old man lamenting, and then the horizons being forged, and the battle for the celestial sphere, and then restoring the sun and moon. There's no breaks between any of this. It's all done back to back, and I think that's a really cool concept to apply this idea of the one shot into music. It's yeah, it's kind of blowing my mind now that I'm kind of piecing that together, that there is no breaks here. There are very few albums I can think of that have no breaks, but they don't lend themselves to this concept as well. I feel like there's still gaps in the story that we aren't hearing about because they don't progress the story on. Um, but here, it feels like every piece of the story is going back to back because there are no breaks between it. We are seeing everything from the birth of Kalevala to whatever the eternal bliss is that comes after the restoration of the sun and the moon, without any aspects missing. And that is a very interesting concept to do because time is not something we tend to associate with music. It's more of a storytelling thing. And while music can tell stories, music does not typically always tell a story. At least not in the grand sense where frame of time would be an integral aspect to the storytelling. So now it's got me thinking, have there been any other concept albums that have done this, where it tells a entire story back to back with no breaks, in an attempt to ensure that the listener feels like they were there from beginning to end? I don't know. That's that's awesome. Kind of blowing my mind right now. Um, I think that's about all I got to say there. I was trying to transition it nicely, get a nice segue into my next concept, but I don't think I have one. I do want to talk about, though, the big elephant in the room, at least for me, how samey everything feels. Maybe that's just me. I don't know if anybody else was getting that. I am going to talk about it a little bit because to me it is the I don't want to say blemish because I don't think it's a bad thing. And it might even play to some of its strengths. In fact, it does play to its strengths in some areas. But I can't help but feel like so much of this song is very samey. The nine parts all have very different atmospheres and moods to them for the most part. And I think they did a great job in creating these soundscapes. The use of different instruments to provide different atmospheres, the different tones and timbres to create different moods and feelings, and then the way that they layer instruments or remove layers to create feelings of isolation or completely filled areas like in the battle segment where it was very full almost all the time because it's emulating the chaos of a war. So I really like how they've created these feelings, and I think in that respect all 9 of them feel very unique and distinct. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking that I felt that the song was 25 minutes of the same thing. I don't. But the melody writing, I think, is the weakest aspect because so many of the melodies are very, very similar. They all start on beat 4 as a pickup note. They usually play a few 8th notes, maybe toss some 16th notes in there for a little bit of a grace note kind of trill, usually jumping up or down a third and coming back to that main note. So you get the doo-doo-doo or doo-doo-doo, and you always return back to that, the note you started on. It's more of a flourish on the note that's intended for that beat. And usually they'll throw 2 or 3 in there, and it's a 4-bar phrase, and on beat 4 of the 4th bar, you do the pickup into the repetition. That pickup tends to, I've heard this multiple times throughout the song, finalize the chord progression and melodic idea while also beginning the repetition. It's a very interesting use of it where it feels like both an ending and a beginning, and for me, it always had a bit of a jostling element to it because of that. I think it's very, very interesting. I think it applies a lot of great compositional storytelling in that it makes the riff cyclical, not just in the fact that it's a riff, but that the music itself begins and ends itself with the same idea. I also think it is actually done very well because ending a riff on beat 3 feels a bit odd to me. So I like that we have that resolution on beat 4, even if it does create forward momentum, forward direction. It is sort of like a resolution tone and a leading tone at the same time. I don't know how they did that, especially as often as they did. So I'm very impressed by that. And I think it's fantastic in applying this theme of cycles to it. But it is also a little odd, at least for me to listen to. But that core idea, a pickup note into a mostly 8th note styled playing with a couple of embellishments of 16th notes here and there, make up the majority of the melody lines. Sometimes they even cut the embellishments out and it's just mostly all 8th note with some rests and some quarter notes and some dotted 8th notes. But I'm not saying it's just straight 8th notes all the time, but it is a very 8th note focused melody. And the rhythmic elements, I'm not saying the rhythm itself, the rhythmic elements are very similar in all of the movements. And then, of course, the range and notes chosen tend to be very similar between all the parts as well. So it creates this idea of very similar melody lines across the 7 main movements, 7 main parts. And I don't know how I feel about that. I didn't really notice it until part 8, part 7, one of those two. It was closer to the end. Part 8, I think, is where I definitely noticed that we were reusing one. I think it still feels to me like it was reusing one, which is fine. It is, I always say that we should reuse ideas. That's, bringing an old idea into a new context. that is 100% a fantastic tool for any composer to use. I'm not saying that it's a detriment that they're reusing elements. It just feels like they're using the same idea for the basis of every melody line, which again, like I mentioned at the beginning, for better or worse, every tool is just a tool. There is no such thing as a bad way to write or a bad tool to use when you're creating music. For me, it tends to pull me out of the experience a little bit because it's like walking down the street and you see the same person over and over and over, and you're like, well, that's not normal. Most humans don't look the same, and for you to see the same doppelganger 5 times in a row in a minute, we got a glitch in the matrix. And that's kind of what I was feeling here. That, at least to me, because I typically expect different melody lines, it feels a little odd and it calls attention to itself. That's what I think it is. It's not, doesn't feel odd. It calls attention to itself, which pulled me out of the experience a little bit. Knowing that that's how it is, maybe on subsequent listens, I will not pay as much attention to it and I will dig into the atmospheric elements and the mood of it more so, knowing that they have more import on the distinction between the parts than the melody does. But on a first listen, it just really stuck out to me. Coming up on the 18, 19, 20 minute mark, that a lot of these melodies felt the same. But like I said, it's for better or worse. Everybody's going to experience the music in a different way, and that's just how I experienced it on my first time, is that I noticed it and got pulled out a little bit. However, it could just be an element of the folk music. I noticed that a lot of the melodic work was not based in metal. A lot of it was based in more folky writing styles and note choices, and it could just be that is the only thing that was allowing them to retain that folky sound on top of the metal, especially when they began to incorporate metal instruments. How do you make an electric guitar with distortion on it sound folky? Well, you got to use folk style composition techniques, and maybe they are a bit limited in that. I don't know, I've never written folk actually. Probably should. I should go look up some composition rules, a composition guidebook, so to speak, of writing Renaissance style folky music, Renaissance era folky music, because that's definitely what this makes me feel like. Definitely, we're talking 1200, 1300 European music, and yeah, I should look into that. Maybe it is a bit more restrictive than I'm understanding it to be, and maybe that is what's causing some of the more repeated elements in the melody line. Because there's only so far you can stretch a genre before you become another genre, and maybe that's one of the limitations of it. I don't know. Like I said, it might not even stick out to me on a subsequent listen. I don't know. I think I've been on about that long enough. Um, I do like the story that's told, but I wish there was a little bit more tension in the music. And again, this may lean into restrictions of folk writing, but there's a lot of adventurous vibes in here, not a lot of dangerous vibes. Even the battle song and Battle for the Celestial Sphere. Maybe that was the only one that I feel really should have had a lot more tension in it. It still felt very adventurous. And maybe that's just personal biases seeping in. Maybe that's just limitations of working within, chordal structures of folk music. I don't know, but it was just way too adventurous for that segment. Even Witch of the Abyss, which I thought started out very strongly as a moody piece, ended up kind of moving into this adventurous element. Forge of Horizons, I think, was the best portion of the song that strayed away from this adventurous element, and a lot of that had to do with atmospheric work and changing up, not atmospheric work, atmospheric sounds, environmental sounds, and changing up the core rhythmic structure of the writing. A lot of it works on this sort of bounciness of these dotted eighth notes. And Forager went hard on quarter notes and half notes and whole notes, and really holding out these extra lengths of sound, which feel so weighty against all of the bounciness that exists in the rest of the song. I feel like I talk about this every video, but for those who are new, who are checking me out for the first time, contrast is so important to music. If you want your heavies to feel heavy, put them up against something soft. If you want your louds to sound loud, put them up against something quiet. If you want something to be weighty, put it up against something light and bouncy. And when you have 12 and a half minutes of light and bouncy, even Old Man's Lament had a little bit of bounce to it. Like I mentioned, I don't think it was quite as pensive as I wanted that section to be. It still had some brighter elements to it, but you put that right up against Forge of Horizons, and it is just, you get this huge weight, this dragging, oppressive element that none other song incorporates, and it stands out. When I think of this song, I'm going to think of Adventure and Forager of Horizons. Like, to me, it is just the standout song that differentiates itself from everything else. And this is a bit of a nitpick, but I really wish that Old Man's Lament and Battle for the Celestial Sphere went in this direction, not specifically being heavier, but being distinct. I think those are the two sections that I think really need that distinction. And I started to say that about Northern Trials, but I think Northern Trials works very well because it is the first hurdle of a story, the first hurdle in the story, and usually the first one is not too big of an issue. It provides a little bit of tension and opposition for the main character, but they can typically overcome it rather quickly. So the fun and bouncy and adventurous elements in it works very well because they do imply a little bit of tension, in that it is not a breeze for these trials to be overcome, but it is not an arduous task either. I just wish some of that extra tension could have been felt closer to the end of the story. However, with those nitpicks aside, this was phenomenal. I was enthralled from beginning to end. I think I even mentioned when we hit like part 4 or 5, I was like, wow, this thing's like half over. It felt like I just started. Um, I don't want to say this to be mean, but usually when we have these long epics, 20 minutes plus, especially some of the 30-minute stuff we've checked out, they have a difficult time keeping me invested all the way through. And that's nothing against them. It's just 30 minutes of listening to the same song. You really got to be into that song. There's some 20 and 30-minute songs that I absolutely love, but that's because I've listened to them many times and I understand them, and I'm got that critical thing turned off, and I'm just listening to them casually and absorbing it. So it's just a different mindset of listening to a song for the first time that maybe might not even be up my alley. I like folk metal, but it's nothing that I would listen to casually, if that makes sense. Um, but the thing is that this one kept my attention all the way through. And it might be due to so many short sections. A lot of these were 2, 3 minutes long. It was like a collection of standard 3-minute songs. Let's see, Forge of Horizons was the longest at 4 minutes. That is not a long thing. Um, so I that could have been some of it, but there also could have been a little bit of the element where I didn't have to think so critically about everything because, like I mentioned, the melody aspects are very similar. So I could kind of be a little bit more casual about upcoming melody sections because I did not have to put as much thought into them because they did incorporate a lot of familiar elements, and I swear the melody for part 8 is the same as part 2. I got to go back and check that. I'm gonna play them back to back after this video. um, and I think that would be really cool because part 2 is an ode to Kalevala, and part 8 is restoring the sun and the moon. That is the end of the journey. So it'd be really cool if the song for this area is also what was played when the area was restored back to its former glory or whatever. I'm gonna look this up though. Kalevala. I may be kind of upset if this is some. It's a 19th century work of epic poetry compiled by Elias Lönnrot. Oral. Oh, it's from Karelian and Finnish oral folklore and mythology, telling an epic story about the creation of Earth. Nailed it. Describing the controversies and retaliatory voyages between the peoples and the land of Kalevala, as well as the construction and robbery of the mythical wealth-making machine Sampo. This work is also well known internationally and has partly influenced, for example, Tolkien's Middle-earth mythology. Interesting. So it was created 1835 and is a creation myth. And it's from Old Finnish folklore and mythology. Very cool. So I was right on the nose for that. Anyway, I just wanted to get that in the video. I was right. So yeah, I'm very interested. I might check out the poem. I don't know how long it is. We'll see how long it is. See if there's an English translation. Yada yada yada. Might check it out and then listen to the song again, maybe with it or after I've read it, and see how it all lines up. Very cool. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Antti Martikainen Kalevala. Epic folk metal. All 9 parts. That's where you guys come in though. Hit me up. Let me know if you enjoyed that or not. Anything that might have stuck out to you that I didn't touch on. Obviously, there's a lot left in the song that I did not get a chance to address. There's a lot of really cool things that I probably forgot about. It is 25 minutes of fairly dense music. Oh, I do want to talk about this real quick. I think it's really cool that all 9 parts are riffs. Maybe all 9 parts. It's definitely true for the first 4. I think I kind of forgot about this theory at the last half of the song. But there's a core theme to each section that gets played upon. There's variations on it. Maybe there's layering differences that happen. I know in Old Man's Lament, we build up all this and then we strip it down and bring it back down to a couple of instruments playing the core theme. But each song is based on a single melodic idea, and it gives each section its own identity in that manner. And each section ends up being an exploration of a theme, and that theme tends to line up with what's going on in the music. I think Battle for the Celestial Spheres is the only one that I don't think would fit with that, and that's specifically because I think there's 2 sections to that. There's the opening section that's very heavy, and then the second half, which gets more of an adventurous feel. I don't remember if there was a core melody line that went across both parts. But for the most part, from what I can remember, each of these sections is based on a core theme. And the atmosphere, the sound floor, the soundscape, they all kind of change throughout the songs, throughout the parts. But the melody itself stays the same with minor variations put on it. And I think that's very cool. Instead of creating entire songs for each of these settings, we create moods with a theme song for the setting. and that's really cool. It's like each section of each part of the song has a little leitmotif for it. Very cool. All right, yeah, like I said, comments if you got them. When you're done commenting, description box, there's a link in there for Linktree. Very cool resource. It's a menu with buttons and like menu icons and stuff. Instead of clicking on all these messy links, it's just a really nice menu with everything related to the channel, Discord, Patreon, Twitter, all that stuff. There's like 11 things in there. You'll probably find something that you're curious about. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all of those. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll be finishing up Norwegian Rock and Metal Week. No, not finishing it up. We got 2 more to go. Tomorrow will be the penultimate episode, and then we'll have a special selection after that. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.